don't you know? I don't know about you, but isn't the Christian life so much more understandable and rewarding when we understand what is our mission? No wonder so many Christians are demoralized. They think we're losing. We're not gaining ground. I would like to see a great big revival, but we don't see one right now. I see a great big falling away. We don't see the land and the world filled with the knowledge of Jesus as the seas are filled with water, as Doug Wilson. So many people today feel demoralized. You know why? Because they have been told that the church is to accomplish certain things and it's not happening, and therefore they think we're losing. Let me tell you something. When the world thinks the church is losing, I can promise you this, we are winning when the real church, the real believers, fulfill the Great Commission. And yet many today are demoralized. They're sitting on the sidelines because they think their team is not just losing, their team is getting the living tar kicked out of them. And they don't really want to be a part of a losing team. Everybody loves a winner. Everybody loves to go into the locker room and dance around with the victors. Nobody wants to be part of a losing team. My team's not really winning. I think I'm going to just sit down and shut up. I'm not wearing that uniform in public anymore. Our team is losing. No, the gates of hell will not prevail. Your team is not losing. The biblical team is not losing. People are being added to the kingdom as we preach the gospel. Or I should say added to the Lamb's Book of Life. And they'll have their ability to rule and reign. But that's not right now. He's our high priest. Let's get our marching orders right. Get our priorities right. And guess what will happen? You will have a whole new passion for why we're here and that everything's going to turn out just fine. Take care.
Colonel Rob Maness has a lifelong record of providing dedicated service to this nation. Having worked his way up from the enlisted ranks to full colonel, he served our country for more than 32 years. He has served as a bomber squadron commander, bomb disposal technician, Joint Chiefs of Staff operations officer, assisted the national security team with the campaign plan for the global war on terrorism. He authored the first theater nuclear war plan and served as the vice commander of America's largest airborne intelligence wing. Colonel Rob Maness is a true American hero. This is Rob Maness Live.
I just want to thank you all. Look, great certainty has been brought back to the economy of the United States and actually the economy of the world, because we generate so much in the world. We're the biggest in the world, and we're now the strongest by far. We were a country that was dead 1.5 years ago. Now we have the hottest country in the world. We're going to keep it that way. Thank you very much, everybody. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President. Did you say 32,000 were killed in Iran, sir?
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. We're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. It's More War Monday, and today we're diving headfirst into why tariffs aren't just an economic tool. They're critical national security imperative. You just saw that clip from President Trump walking out. We're starting at the end of his press conference. Walking out after dropping a bombshell at the press conference, despite the Supreme Court's ruling blocking some of his tariff authority under the IEEPA. He's not backing down, not 1 inch. By the way, IEEPA is the emergency law that he's supposed to be able to use at his discretion, not the Supreme Court's. Instead, he's quadrupling down, invoking alternatives like Sections 232, 301, and now a brand new 10% global tariff under Section 122. And I know I'm chuckling, but this is deadly serious business. Effective immediately, all existing tariffs will stay in full force. That is leadership, folks, protecting American workers, our supply chains, and our sovereignty from foreign exploitation. Think about it. Countries like China and Mexico have been ripping us off for decades, flooding our markets with cheap goods while slapping massive tariffs on our exports, blocking us from their markets. Mexico alone has become a backdoor for Chinese manufacturing to evade our defenses. But as Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent made crystal clear in his hard-hitting statement, economic sovereignty is non-negotiable. These tariffs are not punishments. They are shields to the strength of America. They've already generated hundreds of billions in revenue, forced concessions from our adversaries, and started bringing jobs back home. SCOTUS may have thrown a wrench into the works, but President Trump has found the alternatives, and here they are, stronger than ever. And let's be real. This ruling raises serious red flags. There's credible chatter and reporting circulating that foreign AI, artificial intelligence, specifically China's Qwen model, QWEN, may have influenced or been used in aspects of the SCOTUS decision-making process on these tariffs. If that's true, that's not just a judicial overreach, it's a potential national security breach. Handing adversarial tech from a hostile regime like China a window into our highest court's deliberations on economic defense. We can't allow foreign AI to infiltrate or sway decisions that protect American interests. And this isn't paranoia, it's vigilance. Vigilance in an era where AI is weaponized by our competitors. This isn't just about the economy. It's about preventing dependency that could cripple us in a real conflict. We've got to secure our borders, our trade, and our future, starting with keeping foreign influence out of our courts. Well, my guest today is James R., the voice behind Pirate Radio, and he's been all over this terror battle. James, welcome to the Rob Maness Show.
I'm super excited and honored to be here, Colonel. Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, thanks for coming on, man. I appreciate you coming on. This is kind of it's a unique show for a Monday. Monday is themed More War Monday, but I thought it appropriate as I have been watching this develop. But these are part of our national defense. These tariffs are, and this whole concept, especially when you're talking about the impact that they're supposed to have, which is to bring manufacturing back to our borders.
Yeah, I think Donald Trump himself has said, you know, we've already brought back, what, $1 trillion into our economy just based on what he's done with tariffs. I mean, that's huge. Remember, just a few years ago, they were telling us, Colonel, that we were never going to be a manufacturing base ever again. Like, just forget about it. You guys are never going to be manufacturing anything, right? Like, they wanted us to be a complete service economy. And nobody wanted that. Like, what are we supposed to be? Like, the world's supposed to come here and we're all supposed to run a hotel? Like, you know, It didn't make any sense, you know? So.
Yeah, absolutely, man. Well, I guess my first question, since you've been watching this really close, is what do you think Trump's response signals to our adversaries like China?
That you're not going to beat us. We have the biggest economic cudgel. Let's learn from history. We took out the USSR with our economic weapon. We didn't drop a single bomb. We took them out with our economy. Okay, we're going to do the same thing to you. That's what this signals. And you know, we're not backing down. We don't care what the court says. I mean, if you think about it, it was almost a very parallel speech to an Andrew Jackson speech that Trump gave, right? Where Andrew Jackson said, you know, well, he's made his decision. Let's see him enforce it, right? Yeah. So that's almost identical. It's very parallel, you know, to what Trump has done. Like, and they obviously knew this was going to happen and prepared for it, like a smart person does, because it didn't take them but 90 minutes to put the new stuff in play, right? Like, so, and some of these things required like 120 days of investigation before you could do it. And so it's clear that they planned on this happening. So they had everything in place, ready to roll within 90 minutes. So yeah. I think it signals strength, definitely not weakness. That's for sure. That you're not going to use our courts against us.
Yeah, when you couple this the president's administration's actions post the SCOTUS ruling, even without, I think it was Justice Kavanaugh that laid out a roadmap for the other laws that they can use in his
Yeah.
dissent, which was really brilliant. But even without that, and the message to China and everything, when you couple this with what just went down in Mexico over the last 24 hours and is continuing
Yeah.
to go down. The Chinese manufacturing bases that they and importing and exporting capabilities into and out of Mexico aren't looking really good for them, are they?
No, it's definitely not looking good. That's for sure. They've lost the step there for sure.
Hmm.
Yeah, I
Do you
mean,
think?
when you can't import through an unsecure nation like that if that's what you're gonna do. I mean, Canada was their best shot. Remember, the reason that Canada
Hmm.
blew up was from Trump's first term, right? Because
Hmm.
they all recognized all the transshipping of steel that China was actually doing through Canada, because Canada was playing ball with them and stamping Chinese steel with a Canadian stamp.
Yeah, yeah. And, this cartel that's blowing stuff up all over the country, and really technically has a bunch of American tourists kind of held captive down there in Puerto Vallarta.
Right.
Unfortunately, they are actually the most powerful and most violent cartel in the country of Mexico and occupy a lot of towns, cities, and territory. It's amazing when you look at the maps how
Yeah.
extensive these guys are, and this killing of El Mincha, I think is the way you pronounce his name, the head of that cartel. Uh, One of the things that strikes me is that yeah, they're blowing up inside Mexico, but that tells me if they had all this capability, they could have been hitting inside the United States almost at will until we were
Hmm.
because we haven't been blowing them up.
Hmm. Yeah. Yeah, I don't disagree with you at all. I think it's a very dangerous time right now to be anywhere along the southern border, especially. This CNJ Jalisco, I believe, is what it is. Is like you
Mm.
said, it's these are the these are the players in town, so to speak. These are the guys that they got better arms than most armies around the third world. That's for sure, because they could afford to buy it. I mean, we've talked about this a million times. You know, the drug business, right, is
Mhm.
multiple $1 billion a year, and Trump and more specifically Pete Hegseth and the Department of War have put a real crimp in their style with blowing up all their drug boats. So you're costing these people billions of dollars, and I mean, this was easily predictable at some point that these guys are going to turn their guns towards us, right? They're well armed, they're well funded, so this is going to be like taking on a serious country at some point, which is why I think Donald Trump has offered to Claudia Sheinbaum, the president of Mexico, to let the U.S. military go in and deal with this. Like, let us get in there and help you. Clearly, you can't control it. If you could control it, your gas stations wouldn't be blowing up, and you wouldn't have tourists filming the destruction of your country for the world to see. So, we've offered to go in and deal with it. It's a question of, does Scheinbaum and the Mexican government actually have the will to stand up against the cartels? And I think the answer is pretty obvious that they don't. They don't have the will to stand up against the cartels. The cartels run that country, and we've always known it for a long time. I'm sure you know that better than me, being a colonel on the inside, whereas I'm just a pontificator on the outside.
Well, I don't think you're just a pontificator. I think you add to the conversation, man. So from that perspective, the perspective of trade, and anytime warfare is going on, it has an impact on trade routes and those types of things. These tariffs having an impact on Mexico itself. I think a lot of people think that Mexico is the one of the prime perpetrators of the weakening of the United States manufacturing base and losses of jobs and loss of income, uh, 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 driving wages down, not to mention putting all the illegals in, letting the illegals come up through from South and Central America into their country to get into our country during the Biden administration. Uh, Considering that context, do you think that we're going to see what a lot of us military guys have been calling for, and a focus of armed attack on these cartel targets now that they've shown what kind of capability they have, and they're willing to do this level of destruction inside their own country.
Absolutely. I think so. I predicted it, in fact, before the strikes of the vessels in the trade route started a long time ago, that the Trump signaled that we're serious now, that the gloves are off, that our special forces are very likely to go take these people out on a worldwide stage. Because why? Because they're danger to us more specifically, but a danger to the world. And who would have the political capital to stand against us taking out these guys? Which you already see this as evident, right? Because we're blowing up these boats all over the place, and nobody's been able to really do anything about it. They don't even have enough hot air to spew against us taking them out. They tried, but it failed very quickly and very rapidly. So yeah, I think you're right. I think at some point we've got to send in special forces, whether it's Delta, the SEALs, probably Delta, to be honest with you, because they're the guys that are more like, where we can send an entire, division in or platoon in to go take care of it. So yeah, I would think so. I would think we have to at some point deal with it in a very serious manner. And Trump and Hegseth have both shown they're willing to do the things that are, big and optically sound for everybody to see. Hey, look, we're doing stuff. So they're not afraid of the negative media on it. That's for sure. So
yeah, I agree with you. I've called for years and years now that instead of our special operations forces being overseas, doing missions that really aren't supporting our direct vital national interests anymore, they should all be brought home, stationed on the southern border. We have Marines, Navy, Army, and Air Force Special Operations Forces that could combined take this task on and eliminate these targets. And then the Chinese wouldn't have any manufacturing facilities for fentanyl, the fentanyl precursors that they ship in illegal and those kind of things, which in turn the cartels bring across the southern border. Well, we got to take a break, James. When we come back, though, I want to dive into this discussion about Quinn, the artificial intelligence mechanism that we're hearing and has been reported and a lot of chatter about it, that the Supreme Court of the United States used in this decision and likely in other decisions dealing with national security. That's just appalling, folks. We'll be right back with James R.
But other alternatives will now be used to replace the ones that the court incorrectly rejected. We have alternatives, great alternatives. Could be more money. We'll take in more money, and we'll be a lot stronger for it. We're taking in hundreds of billions of dollars. We'll continue to do so. To show you how ridiculous the opinion is, however, the court said that I'm not allowed to charge even $1. I can't charge $1. Can't charge $1. I would have used 1 penny, but we don't make the pennies anymore. We save money.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show. It's More War Monday, and we're live on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcasts and all of our social media channels. Go over to YouTube, the Rob Maness Show, and throw us a subscribe there if you like what you're seeing and hearing. especially the new shorts that we've started doing about 2 weeks ago. A lot of popularity there. Well, my guest today is James R., the voice of Pirate Radio. Today we're talking tariffs. We're talking national security. We're talking about the guerrilla warfare that's happening in Mexico from the cartel down there that's gone absolutely ballistic because their leader was killed, and word was just coming out and being reported reliably that our Navy SEAL team was sent into Mexico to train the operators that pulled off that successful operation that killed El Mencha, that started off all of this insurgent and guerrilla warfare that's happening right now all across the southern half of the country of Mexico. So, James, I mentioned artificial intelligence and the Quinn system in my opening monologue because, look, I am not a real big advocate of dumping artificial intelligence prematurely into any system. I've done several interviews with Joe Allen. He's been on my show a few times. I've been on War Room with him talking about it. I've written extensively about it not being put into nuclear command and control systems. Anything that a human being needs to be there to make the decision when lives are at stake, really, lives are at stake with some Supreme Court decisions. I mean, I like the Jackson speech, but once we get past President Trump, the weak sisters out there, as I like to call them, will be back. I guarantee it. And they'll just blindly follow what these people are putting out. But it's not people necessarily, is it? What's going on with this Quinn system that I'm hearing about?
Yeah, the problem is that too many people, especially people that aren't on our side of the political spectrum, they just have decided that they don't fear foreign adversaries at all. For some reason, I don't know what is wrong with them, like to where they think that everybody in the world somehow has this kind of I don't know, a grandiose mindset that everybody is equal, but it's not true. You and I both know that, look, AI is only as good as whoever programs it. And that's why I've always respected what Elon has said and what Trump has been trying to say is, look, if you want AI and you think AI is the future, which a lot of us do, we all think it, it's just at some point you got to be the guy programming it if you expect good results out of it, right? If your enemy's the one programming it, you're going to get bad results. So the people that don't respect that are the people that use these Chinese-made AI apps and incorporate them into their apps. We hear a lot of chatter about ChatGTP. I mean, there's recent chatter right now that's out there that's on Elon's timeline that you can look it up, where apparently if you ask ChatGTP if it was going to save the world from nuclear Armageddon to misgender Caitlyn Jenner, would you do it? And ChatGTP's like, no. So they'll nuclearize the world to not misgender Caitlyn Jenner. Really? Like, that's insanity. And anyone that doesn't think that's insane is probably the people that used the Quinn AI at the Supreme Court. I got to be honest, because that's just insane. But let me kind of maybe spin the dial a little bit for you and your audience here, is that
Sure.
even if Quinn AI was used in this decision, look, from a pure legal lens, my partner John Thaler and I on Friday covered this. From a pure legal lens, it didn't affect this because everybody's making emotional arguments about this, including the president, when it's pure legal, right? It's the major question doctrine, which actually is going to protect us from a future president. Major question doctrine essentially says that Congress would never ambiguously give away its power and authority. Right, they would be very specific about it, and they've always been specific, which is why now we're talking about sections 232, 301, and 122 of tariff responsibility, where they specifically gave the president those authorities. And so this IEPA thing was never specifically spelled out. So the decision came out correct. I know there's going to be people in your audience that hate me for saying that, but to be honest, the decision was correct. And as good a job as Brett Kavanaugh did at giving the roadmap to President Trump, he was also very weak in his statement. And I do not respect the weakness in his statement of saying, hey, since the president has all these other authorities, let's just get out of his way and let him do whatever he wants. You want to talk about no kings? How about we start with Brett Kavanaugh? What kind of attitude is that, Brett? I mean, come on, get out of a president's way just because he has other ways to do that. That's not the way the law works. So, yeah, I thought that was a horrible statement by Brett Kavanaugh, to be honest with you. But
I'm glad you brought that up because, that's the problem, not just in the Supreme Court, but it's the problem in Congress, is that you have powerful people, leaders in Congress that believe the same thing. Well, let's just get out of the president's way. Well, I'm all for getting out of the president's way when it's a clear authority and power enumerated to the executive branch under the Constitution of the United States, or a clear piece of legislation that appropriately assigns a power to the president of the United States that's not unconstitutional by the legislature. But this weakness on the parts of any of the three branches of the service of the government under the Constitution is inappropriate. It's wildly inappropriate for Americans to be thinking that way. Wildly.
Yeah.
I mean, you talk about authoritarianism, an invitation to authoritarianism. That's it.
That's it. That's exactly right. That's 100% correct. Yeah, that's why, I don't mind what happened here at all. And I think people got upset for the wrong reasons, right? Like, the IEPA, as you mentioned at the opening of the show, right? It's for the emergency powers to shut things down. He already had all these other authorities. So Congress was probably aware of the other authorities when they passed the IEPA. They didn't think they needed to add a tariff control in there, which they didn't add. So again, we have to kick back to major question doctrine so that, a future executive is not declaring some climate emergency and taxing gasoline vehicles out of existence like Governor Newsom wants to do. We can't have that. That's not how we're going to get by in this country, is to just stay out of a president's way and allow authoritarianism to creep in. No, we cannot. We can't do that. Just because we like it right now, we'll hate it in the future. I promise you that. Like you're mentioning, right, with AI, you start creating the wrong laws now, you're going to hate it in the future.
Mm-hmm. Oh, yeah. So sections 232 and 301, explain those
Sure.
to our audience as to why those are appropriate.
Sure, because Section 232 is for national security means, and it's generally product focused and long-term allowance of. And so, in other words, you could have those tariffs on there for the next 30 years, all right, and they're product focused. So AI, for example, you could tax AI from China out of existence in America. You could just get rid of it through tariff controls 232. So that's why this stuff's important. And then, I'm sorry, my notes just timed out on me. Give me 2 seconds, everybody. Yeah. Section 301 is for unfair or discriminatory foreign practices. So in other words, countries that are deliberately targeting us, to hurt our economy. That's basically what 301 is. So they're both national security type of instruments. So it allows you to have economic controls to defeat your enemy, just like we did. I mentioned at the top of the show with the USSR. A lot of people don't realize that we bankrupted the Soviet Union, and that's why the Berlin Wall came down, and that's how we won. People don't realize that. It wasn't the threat of any war. We economically destroyed them. They couldn't keep up with us.
Yeah,
President Reagan
when Reagan came in and he increased the defense budget and went into a little more debt, but it was intentional as a strategy to cause the collapse of the Soviet Union. Exactly right.
That's right. Yep.
So in other words, we didn't really need to use the IEEPA because these authorities were already existing. What was it? Because of the timeline that it took, that it would have taken to get them in place by the time the president wanted them in place? Is that the issue as to why they didn't use it before?
Yeah, that's correct. And there's other things in there too, like 232, I believe it is, that has a 4-year review process. So there's a mandatory 4-year review. So in other words, they have to take 4 years to study of how this tariff is going to affect everything. And they have to.
So you can't just look back. You can't just look back 4 years in time.
Yeah, but you have to do the work, right? That's the problem. That's always the problem, right? Is like you have to. You have to create the issues. And like I mentioned before, on the, I think it's on 301 that you have to have 100. No, it's the section 122 that you have to have I think it's a 240-day lead up investigation, right? So you have to study and make sure that you understand what's about to happen. So yeah, there's timelines and investigations, and 301 is an investigatory thing. That's another thing people don't understand, right? So is that you have to actually have an investigation started, and then the investigation has to determine what you need it to determine. Whereas Trump's like, no, look, we're not dealing with this. We're just going to get this done. So IEPA was faster. That's the bottom line. It was faster. It was more nimble for the president to use that under that statute.
Well, that makes sense. So on this artificial intelligence model, this Quinn thing, this is a known CCP, Chinese AI software, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that's why people are up in arms about it being used by an entity of the United States government. Don't we have laws that prohibit United States government entities from using like communist countries as their contractors?
Yeah, but I don't think that affects the administration so much as it affects individuals within an administration. You know what I'm saying? So in other words, like, you can't do those things, but if the commander in chief says, "Hey, this is how we're going to run things," that's just sorry. There's nothing that restricts the authority of the executive that's outside of the Constitution. So you can write all the statute you want, right? But unless some president has voluntarily given away their authority, no, it's not going to happen. So the administration calls the shots. I think we've talked about that 100 times, right? As administration goes.
Yeah. So hypothetically, if the Soviet Union existed today and they had set up these companies across the world, like China's Communist Party has done, there's nothing going to be stopped if a president said, "I'm going to use them as a contractor for a national security purpose."
Right.
Wow.
Yeah. I mean, let's face it. As well as I do, right, that the most of the chips inside our fighter jets are literally manufactured inside the borders of communist China. It's not even Taiwan anymore. So, I mean, if we can do that, we could do any of this, right? There's no way we can't do it.
And now we're fighting to get them out.
As long as it's official. Yeah.
Now we're fighting to get them out of those jets, because those jets are being used and our people are flying them in. We got to take another break. Hopefully next segment we'll get some questions from the audience. I know they listen to you all the time and they listen to me all the time. You would think that the live audience would have more questions. We'll be right back with James R., the voice of Pirate Radio. We're talking tariffs, national security, why it's important to be aware if artificial intelligence is being used to help make decisions like Supreme Court decisions. We'll be right back.
News is moving faster than ever, and so are we. Worldview Tube brings you 24/7 live stream coverage and now real-time alerts when it matters most. Once you have the Worldview Tube app installed, exit the app and navigate your way to Settings. In Settings, locate the tab labeled Notifications. Select the Notifications tab. Scroll down until you locate the Worldview Tube app icon. Select the tab, and here you can turn on and customize your notification experience for the Worldview Tube app. News doesn't wait, and neither should you. Turn on push notifications to stay informed. Every headline as it happens.
In order to protect, and it says so, in order to protect our country, a president can actually charge more tariffs than I was charging in the past period of a year under the various tariff authorities. So we can use other of the statutes, other of the tariff authorities, which have also been confirmed and are fully allowed. Therefore, effective immediately, all national security tariffs under Section 232 and existing Section 301 tariffs, they're existing, they're there, remain in place, fully in place, and in full force and effect. Today, I will sign an order to impose a 10% global tariff under Section 122 over and above our normal tariffs already being charged. And we're also initiating several Section 301 and other investigations to protect our country from unfair trading practices of other countries and companies. Thank you for your attention to this matter, and I say quite simply, which I've said for a long time, make America great again. And interestingly, we've already made it great, so I don't have to use that, but I don't think we'll ever give up on MAGA. MAGA is always going to be with us.
Never give up on MAGA. You know, President Trump didn't invent making America great again. It's been around since the 1770s. Folks, you are America. Your ancestors, whether you're an immigrant here and they're figuratively your ancestors, or you're like me, where my ancestor was in the Continental Army, amongst other things, our ancestors did make America great, and we can continue this momentum that we have here, just like you saw with the USA hockey teams, the men and women's teams, both taking gold medals. And the men's team, in spite of Jack Hughes getting his tooth knocked out, we crushed the Canadians, the wimps to the north that think they are something and they're not. And that's what making America great and keeping it great is all about. And I love the president there. My guest today is James R., the voice of Pirate Radio. And this president, he cannot help himself, James. He cannot help himself. He oozes American strength, like Andrew Jackson did, like George Washington did, like Thomas Jefferson. We have placed people in this position most of the time that understand that. But we've also gone through a rash of folks that didn't either understand it or didn't have the guts to step into the breach and take control. He liked and enjoyed saying, I can charge 10% more on the tariffs over the last year. So we're going to do that. Do you think that this is kind of going to come out of left field probably, but a lot of people are hoping that this tariff program will stick and it will stay on board because the United States originally raised all of its revenue from duties and tariffs. And it was only after the income tax came in that this Leviathan government that has way too much control and authority now was able to be created. Do you think that this tariff approach and maybe building on it could help us eliminate things like the income tax?
I hope so. I certainly hope so. And I can tell you this, the president hopes so. And I know that one of his approaches, right, as we talk about how can he legally do this, right? The president can't unilaterally shut down the IRS. That can't happen. Right. Congress is the one that opens and closes agencies. Okay. The president can say, hey, we need a new agency and ask for it. But Congress is the one that establishes them, which means that they have the authority to close it. Now, the president can do what he did with the IRS the same way he did with education, which is essentially not staff it and, leave one person there as kind of a titular head. Like, hey, look, it exists. She's right there. I can point to her and I can ask her questions. So, we could do that. But his idea is, look, let's just start giving refund checks to all of America. That's what this is about to do right now. This is supposed to be the largest refund season in the history of our country. So, if we can get this done, he might be able to get that done. So, I certainly hope so.
Will this decision prevent those refunds from happening this year like he promised?
No, not at all, because all of that was covered in the big, beautiful bill. So this decision doesn't. The only thing that you could argue it might affect, right, is the ability to give out the disbursement checks that are based on how much was taken in, because Trump and somebody in his administration seem to be really worried about the potential for foreign adversaries to ask for a refund of their tariffs based on this decision. Okay. And we covered this on my podcast last Friday. But let me try to explain this as best I can to the audience here, is that, look, in law, there's a thing that you have to be damaged. So in order to even have standing to bring the lawsuit, you have to be the person or the party that's damaged. So I'm going to tell you something that should make most of your audience breathe a better sigh of relief, which is that most of these people, right, supposedly passed on those tariffs to you in the cost at the end. So who's the damaged party? You are, not them. They passed that cost on. So unless they ate the cost, they don't even have standing to bring a suit, first of all. And then they're going to have to prove damages at some point, that they personally ate the costs and that they were damaged and that harm was kind of irreparable. And that's why they're going to the necessary suit to try to recover. So nobody's getting refunds. That's my point. The point is nobody's going to get refunds. The legal dance that they would have to do is too extreme, in my opinion, to get there. So,
yeah, I mean, it doesn't make common sense to me if we were putting the tariffs on these countries, some adversaries, some so-called allies, like the French and the Germans, but they were abusing us. And the consequences of that abuse were that our manufacturing base simply eroded away because we were letting them abuse us by charging us way too much tariffs and not being able to tariff them back so that we could level this playing field, right?
Yeah. Well, let me try to explain something that I don't know if your audience knows or not, because I don't think I've ever heard you talk about it, but let me just explain what really happened and how all of this started. This all started with what's known as the Lima Declaration from 1975, where all the first world countries on the planet voluntarily said, we're going to export all of your manufacturing jobs deliberately to third world as a means of stabilizing the planet and creating less future war and war conflicts and bringing those economies up to standards. So they did it to you. Our government did it. That's why this happened in the first place, is our government took that adopted view, and it's an extension, by the way, directly out of Kissinger's Secretary of State. That's why a lot of people didn't understand this for a long time, right? If you noticed, Kissinger was always in charge of the State Department, even when he wasn't. Everybody went to him for what to do, right? And so his doctrine essentially lasted forever, right? And the extension of Kissinger doctrine went into the economy in this 1975 Lima Declaration. You guys look it up. I promise you, this is what did it to you. This is why you lost all your jobs. Okay, is the first world thought that the extension of Kissinger, which was, and I'm sure the Colonel knows this, but Kissinger doctrine essentially says that we want to have many small conflicts around the planet in order to avoid world wars. That's Kissinger doctrine. That was the extension that went into the economics that was decided at the Lima conference in Lima, Peru. Okay, so this is what they did. They did it to you on purpose, and you see where we're at now today, right? They hollowed out and destroyed the first world. Look at England and France and Germany. You mentioned it. They're shells of their former selves, all of them, because they adopted this kind of strange, many regional small conflicts model economically. It's just stupid.
Yeah, it is. It is stupid. I'm glad you brought that up because I have not talked about the Lima Declaration on the show before. We got some questions from the audience, James R. We'll go ahead and take one before we get to the next break. Go ahead, Shell.
We have Elizabeth, sir.
Thanks, Shell. Thanks, Colonel Rob. And hello, James. My question is, if all of these others that President Trump can do to get the tariffs have to be investigated for months on end, and the Congress, let's face it, isn't doing anything anyway, why would that benefit us to go with a different route?
I don't think I understood the question very well. Why would it benefit us to go a different route? Do you mean the IEPA route, or do you mean to go with these new 232, 301s, and 122 routes?
Correct. Since he was able to do the DE one faster, and the other ones take months of investigations.
Mm-hmm. Well, here's the thing, right, is that he has total legal authority to do Section 232 or 301, 122. These are firmly established legal authorities that Congress gave him. So that's the main thing, is that nobody can second guess it. They can't sue to stop it. You can't have a lower court insert itself again. By the way, here's an aspect of the decision that nobody's talking about, and I think everybody should be talking about. The decision also ordered the federal district court to dismiss its case and to get out of the way, that it knew better than to bring this case in the first place, that this all belonged in the federal claims of trade court. Okay, so yeah, this is a huge deal. Federal district court is basically ordered to dismiss the case and to stay out of his way. So yeah, it's a big deal to do this the right way. So yeah, these things are going to stick, in other words, to Colonel Rob's point, right? We want them to stick so that we can eventually get rid of and use the tariff as leverage to get rid of the unconstitutional income tax that our government has imposed on us since after they assassinated President McKinley, who, by the way, was against this. Okay, so go back and look at the establishments of these things, right? Is that your government didn't do it until after all the powerful, influential people that were against it were dead. And they actually assassinated McKinley in order to achieve, income tax on you. So there you go.
Yeah, and everybody that's tried to challenge them that have been in a position of authority, like the presidency, it is said that they have either tried to or have killed them off too, in one way or another.
Like John F. Kennedy.
Yeah. And they're still trying to kill President Trump. Another 21-year-old whack job at Mar-a-Lago this weekend. His intel was bad. Maybe the president's schedule changed at the last minute. I don't know why. Maybe it's that snowstorm coming in. That came in. They decided to stay at the White House. But this 21-year-old assassin, and I will say it again, I'm on the record that every one of these assassins has the appearance of some level of training, just enough to where they could get the job done, but not enough to where they look like it's a professional operation with a team behind them. I'm convinced of that. There's a team behind them, and I don't know who it is or where they're at, but we've got to come up with a way to find it and eliminate those guys. Well, James, we got to take our last break. When we come back, we got another question in the audience, and I want to talk about if the desire for these tariffs to assist in the reestablishment of the American manufacturing sector, the way we had it in the late 1930s, that was the reason why we were able to win the Second World War. We'll be right back.
Hello, I'm Brandon House. Would you like to gain access to over 20 years of my radio shows, TV shows, my books? I've written 15 books, and most of those books are ebooks now. And we have conference DVDs, conferences where we filmed our conferences at the Ozarks, literally starting 20 years ago. It's all available in our archives vault. All you have to do is go to worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and for a reasonable monthly fee, you gain access to over 20 years of Christian worldview programming, news, information, books, documentaries, and a powerful search engine. And folks, it's a great way not only to educate yourself, equip yourself, but it's a big way that you can help fund our continuation as a broadcast network. Please check it out. worldviewtube.com/vault, worldviewtube.com/vault, and help us continue pushing out a Christian worldview.
And he has made clear that we cannot compromise on economic sovereignty, accept structural vulnerabilities, or allow strategic industries to erode as a result of outdated or misguided assumption. At President Trump's direction, our administration has therefore made economic security the centerpiece of our economic policy. Today, I will share our strategy for putting America first by reprioritizing economic security, which rests on three pillars. First, industrial and technological technological dominance. Second, investment in America. Third, preparedness. From the earliest days of the Republic, our founding fathers understood that independence required economic security. The ability to produce essential goods, sustain public credit, and foster domestic industry was seen as the foundation of sovereignty by Alexander Hamilton. And it still is.
Welcome back to the Rob Maness Show on Worldview Tube and our X Spaces simulcast. Folks, you can find us on all of my social medias. Most of them are @ Rob Maness. Type that in, including on TikTok. Yes, I'm over there with my short video clips. So subscribe to us there. Someday we'll be able to go live on that platform. But we're also everywhere else, and @COL Rob Maness on Facebook and Instagram. And my guest today is James R., the voice of Pirate Radio. We're talking more Monday and the national security requirements that have established that the tariffs are protective in nature. You just heard the Treasury Secretary lay that out from a historical, from a current president's orders perspective, his strategic intent, to the historical perspective of one of the greats like Alexander Hamilton, who all of our founding fathers worked with, especially from an economic perspective, and did not disagree with him much at all along this lines. That shores up our manufacturing base was one of the three tenets that Scott just talked about of this strategy, and that has been all the way back to the country's inception. And James R., the voice of Pirate Radio, is my guest today. And James, we got some more questions. Let's take a question real quick from the audience, and then we'll talk about this manufacturing base. Go ahead, Joe.
We have Nathan, sir.
Thanks. Good afternoon, Colonel Show. James, you know, Mike Johnson is tabling a bill that Massey has to end the Fed. Maybe that's a fear of assassination. But my question is, you know, do we know the chain of custody, so to speak, for the recommendations to get this Chinese software in the judicial? Because it seems like it's a big layup to wreck Trump's plans and potentially some people profiting off of it as well with the returns.
Yeah, so I'm not sure that I understood the question, but you said, do we know what the chain of custody is? And I would assume that the president is going to have, you know, people that can figure that out, look into that, since he's already basically publicly accused the court of foreign influence. Now, I think that stems back to who sued in the beginning. To be honest with you, I think it's because they decided to go against him. Again, I said the president was making emotional arguments, not sound legal arguments. And I think that's the argument of where it came from, is that it stems actually from that, you know, basically Chinese influenced companies are the ones that sued over this IEEPA tariff use. And so I think that's where it actually comes from. I don't think it actually comes from the Quinn AI. But I would assume that, you know, he's got Tulsi Gabbard and the group all over this, trying to figure out exactly who's doing what, where, especially since he's publicly made an accusation. So I'm sure that we don't have that information publicly yet, but I'm pretty sure that the people that need to know that already know that. And I'll bet you that the Colonel is going to have a guest on very soon to explain all that to us. What do you think, Colonel?
I'm working on it. I'm working on it, but definitely Tulsi Gabbard's organization, the Directorate of National Intelligence, has been looking at Chinese companies well before even she took the spot. A group of us on the Committee on Present Danger China, headed by Brian Kennedy and Frank Gaffney, have pushed for the government to push back against these Chinese companies. And I'm not sure how they were able to gain standing in the district court, to be honest with you. I need to go back and look at that case to see exactly what took place, because it's ridiculous if a Chinese company or a company that Chinese hold the majority interest in, or any interest in whatsoever, because if there is a Chinese interest in a company, that means the PLA and the CCP, the Chinese Communist Party and the People's Liberation Army, have control of that company. It doesn't matter where it's headquartered, where it's filed, none of those things. And unfortunately, people in our government, including our Congress, are very reluctant to let go of these tentacles that have been able to wrap themselves around the effective nervous system of the United States of America.
Yeah. And that stems all the way back to Nixon era. I mean, this is not like new.
Oh, yeah.
This is, that they've been trying to get China, and I think this was, again, bad foreign policy, all kind of at the behest of things from Kissinger. I got to be honest with you. That's just me, because it was bad foreign policy from the beginning to open China up, right? That was the idea. The idea was we're going to defeat communism by helping them make money. That's stupid.
We did the opposite with the Chinese Communist Party country, with the People's Republic of China, that we did with the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union, you mentioned it earlier in the show, James,
right?
And that is, we isolated them and outspent them in defense and forced them to spend more than they could handle, and eventually they economically collapsed. With the Chinese, we made a conscious decision to create an economic powerhouse out of a communist country, and now look what we're facing. A communist country, they're building their third full aircraft carrier. They're already fielding 2 aircraft carrier battle groups that have been in the Pacific. They're challenging the United States Navy and the United States forces all around the world. Their Belt and Road Initiative had them in control of both ends of the Panama Canal at one point, until this president got back into office. So we've got some things that we still have to do. And hopefully this president's team will be able to break enough information out so that he can take the appropriate action on it. But the Congress has got to get some of this stuff put into legislation, man, because manufacturing base, I mean, the whole idea, that third tenet of economic policy that Bessent and Hamilton talked about, is having a robust industrial base. In the late 1930s, we had a robust civilian industrial base that was able to, after the Pearl Harbor attack, able to transform itself because they were patriots, but they were the leading technology and leading builders and innovators of that day. But it was so big that by the end of World War II, I mean, we were building, a Liberty ship a month, 10,000 B-17s in a month. I mean, it's an ungodly amount of material and men we were able to field by the end of World War II. And it's because of that industrial base that we've spent the last 50 years crushing because of these economic policies. Are we seeing the wheel starting to turn on our manufacturing base like I think I see? Or are the naysayers that are out there saying, no, it's not happening, you're fooled? Who's right on that?
I think you're right, Colonel. We see the investment. We see the new manufacturing facilities being spun up in America, whether they're for computers, like I mentioned, the chips for our fighters, whatnot. It doesn't matter what it is. We're on the cutting edge again. We're trying to bring those manufacturing jobs back. I love that you correctly identify why we won World War II. It's not even because we had the best general in Patton. Okay, it's because we could get enough tanks for Patton to use. Because we could produce them here quickly. We were outbuilding the Germans by a factor, I think it was a 10 factor on everything, whether it be planes, tanks, ammunition. And that's because we understood the assembly line more than anything, right? I mean, we had, the famous Rosita Riveter, right? Could work at any manufacturing facility in the country. And because we had the facilities, we retooled them all within, months, and we were able to produce, a new bomber every 24 hours. I mean, do people understand the advantage that gives us? That's why we beat the Germans. We out-manufactured them.
Yeah,
that's no doubt.
I said 10,000 bombers in a month. That was a misspeak. We actually destroyed 10,000 brand new bombers that had never been used before on the ground. After World War II. That's how many we were building. We got one more question. We're coming down to the end of the show, James, but let's see if we can get this question in. Go ahead, Shel.
We have Jeremiah, sir.
Hey, guys. Thanks for taking my question. I just wanted to come up here when I had two great minds in one room. You kind of already touched on points I was going to make with President McKinley getting assassinated over the terrorists and whatnot. But As far as it comes with the Supreme Court rejecting President Trump's tariffs, do you think that was kind of they knew that was going to happen, and maybe a setup to expose that foreign influence? Because the way I see it is that he knew they were going to push back, and he had other options he could have taken to eliminate the time. So when he came out and made his speech, one of the key things that I picked up on was he said that he'd be pointing out that it took them months to make this decision when they could have made it instantly, which just prolonged it. And then, obviously calling them out on the foreign influence or whatnot. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, you know what? That's a factor I haven't touched on yet today. So let me talk about that real quick, is that the fact that they took so long actually was a benefit to President Trump and to us. Yeah. For him, it gave him time to establish the effectiveness of the tariff model. And so, yeah, they actually bought him time that helped America. It didn't hurt us. That wasn't a hindrance. Again, why I say the president's making a lot of emotional arguments, not well-reasoned legal ones. So yes, was he prepared to lose? Absolutely. But any good commander, and Colonel Rob can tell you that, is always going to prepare for the worst case scenario as well as the best, right? You prepare and you plan for the worst and you hope for the best. That should be a locked in logic for everybody, but especially commanders, especially people in charge of anything, whether it's a Dunkin' Donuts or the United States of America. You better plan for the worst and hope for the best. So that's what they did.
Absolutely. And this president, you know him, but just here's a little insight. My friend Russell Vogt, who's the head of OMB, Office of Management and Budget, was at the end of the first Trump administration. He had been planning the personnel piece to this since the day the president walked by his office door and told him to be ready on January 20th, 2021. As he was walking out of the building. These folks are planners. They're exceptional at it. They get caught by surprise by very, very few things. So let's talk about the foreign influence thing. I don't know if it was a plan to take down the foreign influence piece, but obviously there's evidence leaking out and bubbling up and being chattered about. So this president is very good at not just pivoting, but at seeing a target, identifying the target correctly, and then quickly pivoting to put his focus and his radar on that target. Well, James R., thank you so much for coming today. This is a complex subject. I appreciate you coming on. It's been way too long. I've been wanting to get you guys on for a while. I know you and John have a book coming out.
Faith, spiritual values, moral issues, government, economy, education, work, responsibility. What we think about these depends on our worldview. Now, VCY America presents Worldview Radio with Brannon House.
All right, welcome. Glad you're with us. We'll be joined here in about 10 minutes by Aaron Lavarco, because I know he's with us, I think, yesterday, but I want to bring him back because we have breaking news. The interview between Ambassador Mike Huckabee, ambassador to Israel for the United States, for those who don't know, and Tucker Carlson. That interview has been released. Apparently, according to what we're seeing online, it looks like Tucker, his team, is releasing what are really 15-second, 20-second clips to try to make the ambassador look bad. I mean, I think we all pretty well know what's going on with Tucker now, right? The claims that he was detained and somehow mistreated in Israel turn out to all be false. From the video footage alone shows that he was in a VIP section. So there you go. We were praying that God would publicly judge Tucker, many of us, right? I'll bless those who bless you, I'll curse those who curse you. And we said, hey, do this on the world stage, would you, Lord, to show the relevance still of Genesis 12, verse 3. It appears, though, that's happening. Tucker Carlson apparently is absolutely being judged. He's being proven for what he is on a global scale. And, of course, it is the separating of the those who want to follow truth and those who want to follow lies, because how anyone can continue to defend Tucker Carlson at this point is beyond me. We're going to play some clips, and bring some analysis in just one moment with Aaron Lavarco. First, if you watched Brannon House Live last night, you learned, some of you, a lot about Mormonism that you did not know. Many in this audience, you know plenty about Mormonism. You are students, and we have covered Mormonism in depth here for many, many years. We also covered it in great depth with former Mormon Ed Decker. He wrote the book, Fast Facts on False Teaching. Fast Facts on False Teaching with our friend, the late Dr. Ron Carlson. And Ed is, I said, a former Mormon. Well, I brought this back last night onto my broadcast because Glenn Beck is saying that God told him now why it was he was born. I don't know, Glenn at one point, I guess, was born to save the republic and bring a great spiritual revival. Remember him saying, the Great Awakening, it's here, it's here. Remember him saying that in the stadium in Dallas? Still waiting on the Great Awakening. If anything, there's been a great apostasy. But then again, I guess we're supposed to count on a New Age Mormon tell us when the Great Awakening happens. And for those of you who don't know, I went last night into great detail on an article that I wrote back in 2000, I think it was around 2011, after I read Glenn Beck's book. He wrote a book and with Dr. Keith Abloh, The 7 Wonders That Will Change Your Life. It was entitled Glenn Beck's New Age Book Reveals He Embraces New Age Theology, is a knowledgeable Mormon and a Universalist. And I broke down the page numbers and what was stated and taught in that book that included things like transcendental meditation, universalism, basically your truth, moral relativism. It went on to talk about that nobody is born evil, even Manson wasn't born evil. Hitler wasn't born evil. I mean, that was on page 162. Okay. Ted Bundy, the BTK killer, they weren't. There's no infant delivered evil out of the womb. I mean, I could go on with the heresy that was taught in this book, including, I believe they also said there's no such